Hi, Rachel here. I just wanted to give a couple of notes before getting started on this episode. First of all, thank you so much. If this is the first time listening or if you've been with us for a couple episodes, this is really exciting. I'm really enjoying talking to entrepreneurs and learning about their unique challenges and successes, but also just getting to know people on an individual level, which is great. So this is the very first podcast that we recorded with Daniel Cohen, and it is absolutely incredible. But there are a couple of things I wanted to let you know before starting in terms of trigger warnings. So the first thing is to let you know that there is some talk of suicidal ideation and seizures, which I know can trigger some folks. And then the big thing I wanted to let you know is there are some sirens in the background. This was recorded, Daniel's in downtown Manhattan. And obviously, there are some city noises that can't be avoided. So if you're listening in your car, just wanted to make sure that you understand that this is coming up and there's not a cop chasing you. So thank you so much and welcome to episode 3 of Entrepreneur Crush. Okay, so this is our very first recording, which is really exciting. And I have with me Danny Cohen, who I actually met as a stranger in a Facebook group. So this is us meeting for the first time. But I've read a little bit of his bio. He has some really interesting stories and really interesting work he's doing. So Danny, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. My name is Daniel Cohen. I'm a speaker, an author, and I'm a coach who helps those living with chronic illness embrace their mess, live in gratitude, and thrive. So the reason why I do that work is because I myself am living with 3 chronic illnesses. I have epilepsy, cerebral palsy, and hydrocephalus. I've been living with, cerebral palsy and hydrocephalus since birth. And those of you that don't know much about cerebral palsy or hydrocephalus first is extra cerebral spinal fluid on the brain. So I was diagnosed of having that at 6 months. And then that basically causes a slew of different unsightly side effects that aren't really great. As a matter of fact, over the past 3 months, I've had to have 3 brain surgeries for shunt revisions. They usually insert they insert a shunt in your head to help drain the excess brain fluid. So just about 3 weeks ago, I just got out of the hospital for my last revision. And then with my cerebral palsy, there are different levels of cerebral palsy. What's considered a left hemiplegic. My left side doesn't function properly. So those 2 things were diagnosed at birth, and then I was diagnosed as having epilepsy at age 10. So as if the 2 weren't enough, then they decided to throw in a third. So I've been living with those for my entire life now, but in the beginning, I didn't like who I was. I was bullied and teased when I was a kid, and that really took a toll on me throughout my life, and not just in childhood but also in adulthood as well. So up until the age of let's say 32 years old, I really didn't like the person I was, and I wasn't treated right from women. I wasn't treated, maybe it was me that didn't see that I was treated right from women, or didn't see that I was treated right from other people as well. But by the age of 32, I had pretty much had enough of the life that I was living, and I chose to go down the path of trying to end my life, and I almost did. I live in Manhattan, so what I had done is I almost got in front of a subway train, but I thankfully did not do that. When I had gotten home, I had a series of 7 seizures, and those 7 seizures had prompted a series of brain surgeries a year later. Those brain surgeries are unsuccessful they were supposed to help stop my seizures. And in 2013, after learning that those surgeries were going to be unsuccessful for my seizures, I realized that I had to really change the way I looked at my life. And so while I was lying in my hospital bed, I was in the hospital for about 3 months, 2013. And I started to write a series of promises to myself over the course of a month. Promise to be more grateful, promise to love myself, promise to love my family, to accept myself for who I am and for what I have. And then I started to tell other people who were going through similar issues, whether they didn't love themselves for who they are, whether they were living with a disability or not at that point, but then also those people that were going through a chronic illness. I started to, teach the principles of gratitude, teach the principles of acceptance. And I ended up writing a book out of those promises when I got out of the hospital. So that's why I do the work that I do. I wanted to really give back. And that's basically it. That's why I do my coaching, my writing, and so it's a bit of a long, drawn-out introduction, but that's basically where I'm at right now.
That's a really important story. And I know I start this with a big smile and I'm really excited about, launching a new podcast, but this is really about stories and everyone has their stories. I will say I have your book. I love it. It's just
Thank you.
beautiful. It's on Amazon. It's for each of these promises he has. I got a new computer. I don't know where my mouse is. And my apologies if there's noise. It's storming in Florida. So he has a paragraph. So promise 15 is dream. Is it okay if I read this one?
Go right ahead.
Okay, so it says, a dream isn't met until we follow through on it. Never lose sight and always strive to do your best in the quest to make it come true. Get obsessed with your dream, show it all the love in the world, and slowly watch the dream blossom. But first, before all else, make yourself a solid promise that you will make this happen. And then the second paragraph on the page is about, I will do this dream, or I will do this promise. So it says, today, promise to dream big. Even though you might hit a few bumps in the road along the way and that dream might look distant, I will hold it close to my heart and never lose sight of it. I will have the passion, desire, and drive to do anything, and I will always strive to do my best to strive to get what I want in life. And I have goosebumps and it's storming outside. And so tell me a little bit more about your business. So you said you do coaching and writing and speaking?
Yeah, so I do work with private clients, and I generally do that work. I do a monthly program with those private clients, and I do have a blog as well. So it's through the blog, it's thepromisesyoukeep.com, and I basically just write it. That's the basis for my inspirational work, is through the blog. And I did a lot of speaking in the past. I'm trying to do a lot more speaking now. I mean, with the whole COVID thing, it's been a little difficult. So hopefully after we get through this, I'll be able to branch out more and do more of the speaking, get out there and do a lot more writing now. I'm actually working on a second book. And this is going to be a sequel to the 31 Days, 31 Promises. So that's more in depth about my story and why I chose to write the book. It tells about how I led up to the promises, tells about the surgeries itself, and it tells about why I well, it tells about the principle of the promise and why you really should keep a promise to yourself. So um, that's what I'm working on at the current moment. But primarily what I do now, I am working with private clients. I'm putting together a digital product as well. That's still in the works. It'll probably be out possibly later next month. But that's something that somebody will be able to purchase for a price of possibly $47 to $50, and they can just use and it'll teach the principles of gratitude, acceptance, and self-love. So those are things that I have in the works right now.
So what would you say to someone who, I mean, I know that you've gone through so much and are really doing some good work in the world. What would you say to someone who is kind of down on their luck about doing something, you know, taking a big step or putting themselves out into the world? What was it like, that kind of moment when you said, like, I'm going to help other people who are going through what I've been through?
I would say do it, because it's the most rewarding thing in the world to do. And if you're afraid that no one's going to want to listen to your message, I was actually having this conversation the other day with my client, that if you're afraid of what the other person's going to think, don't be afraid of what the other person's going to think. Everyone has a message. Everyone wants to hear your message. Somebody's always looking for inspiration or for some additional hope in their life. Don't be ashamed of sharing your story. Don't be vulnerable. Vulnerability is powerful. So don't hold your message in. Share your message. It's such an important thing. And a lot of us, and I was this way too. I was afraid to say that I have a disability and that I have a neurological disability, especially, and with seizures, living with epilepsy, your brain's constantly going 50 miles an hour anyway. So it was hard for me to say that I have a seizure disorder, because people judge you on that automatically. So it was very hard for me to even say that I have a seizure disorder. But then once I started to say it, and once I started to, tell people that I'm no different than you are, I just have this electrical malfunction, I started to see that people were accepting that, and that I was no different than anyone else. So, and I was also inspiring others, whether they had a neurological issue or not. I was inspiring the world with my message. And if you have a message, share it. If you have a story, share that. Don't be afraid of what other people are going to think about you. And it's so important to just do that.
What does the future hold for you, Danny Cohen?
I certainly hope the future is, well, I know that the future is very bright for me.
I know it is too.
I have a very big outlook about, how I want to see things in my future. I mean, to be quite honest, living with the things that I live with, I don't really, these big marketing coaches and this, that, and the other, they say you set a 1-year goal, a 5-year goal, and a 10-year goal. I actually don't do that. I set these little goals for myself because I'm more about living in the present, because I don't know what the next moment's going to be for me. So I'm more about living in the present, and I talk about that with everybody, because if I end up thinking too far ahead of myself, it's either I end up having a seizure, or I, end up just, it's too difficult for me to think about, because I don't know what's going to happen in the next moment for myself, especially living with a health condition. So I know my future is bright, but I think about today instead of thinking about tomorrow and next week and next month. And next year.
Makes a lot of sense. And I'm sorry if that wasn't the right question.
It's okay.
This is, I mean, been very eye-opening and very inspiring. And I am excited to read your next book. I am going to the book, in addition to each of these, what is the goal? This is my promise. There's a section that's basically a journal. So you're kind of holding yourself. I love that idea that I could kind of keep a journal, but peek back on what the promises are, but still make it for you. So I know I'm going to be doing that. Is there anything else you'd like to say, or anything that that I didn't ask that would make sense to share with either your clients or entrepreneurs as a new entrepreneurs?
Well, you had mentioned earlier about embracing the beautiful mess of life. And I talk about that quite often. You know, I pretty much, I think I throw that, you know, I do these morning messages every morning. And I think I throw something about gratitude in every morning, but I also throw something about embracing your beautiful mess. And whether you're living with an illness or not, life is a beautiful mess. So, and that could mean, you know, for me, for instance, I could wake up and the night before I would have a seizure at night, you know. So I have nocturnal seizures, but my seizures are all over the place since my surgeries. So I could have had a seizure through the night, and it's either I choose to wake up and feel miserable, or I choose to wake up and feel grateful and happy that I'm alive for another day, and I can get up, go for a walk, breathe the fresh air, look at the sunshine, or, you know, take in the rain, whatever it is. But then the average person, you know, the average person who is quote unquote healthy, or normal, you know, because there's no one that's normal, but
Yeah.
right. But
I know I'm not.
yeah, right. But for the average person, when you get up and you wake up on the wrong side of the bed and you had a bad night, you're tossing and turning because you had a bad dream, or you're thinking about that project that's waiting for you and it hasn't been turned in, or you just have a new podcast that you're working on, or, you know, or a new, you know, just website that you're trying to figure out, whatever it is.
Mhm.
But it's all the pieces aren't put together. Wake up and just be thankful for the day. You know, life is a beautiful mess, but you got up, you're breathing, it's a new day. Take on the day regardless, because you'll still get the work done. It might take you some time to get it back in swing, and it might take some time for those projects to get done, but eventually they'll get finished. We all have 24 hours in a day, and eventually that 24 hours is going to work out for you. But if you're going to be miserable in those 24 hours, would you rather be miserable in those 24 hours or feel good in those 24 hours? It comes down to that. It comes down to your perspective. And life's a beautiful mess. So you can either embrace your mess, or you can either deny that you're going through a mess. And there are those people that deny that they have a mess, or they embrace their mess. So I'd much rather embrace my mess and enjoy it, as opposed to deny the fact that, you know, sometimes life's real shit. And then on the other hand, sometimes life is really great. So you have two sides to it. There's the good and there's the bad, and then there's the in between. So that's the beautiful mess.
Thank you so much for the gift of your time today. This was incredible. I know I have a lot to think about and a lot of promises to make. And I will be in touch with you shortly, but thank you so much for your time today. This was really wonderful.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Bye, Danny.
Bye-bye.